Howdy. I'm back, kind of bummed out. I shot about a half hour worth of video working on the sculpture the other day and I lost most of it. I did salvage a small bit of it and you'll probably be seeing that on the Mondo website eventually, but yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I'm still figuring out this GoPro and how to save footage and transfer and all this other stuff, so that's a bummer. But just to kind of maybe recap a little bit, I talked a bit about these tools that I use, these rakes that were kind of introduced to me via some videos from some of my artistic heroes like Steve Wang and Chet Zar and some of the guys that use them extensively for their sculptures. They're basically a shaping tool and a shaving tool. You can see I went at most of the body was blocked out the other day in the video, and what I did is I went over it and shaped it down, whittled it down to kind of like a bare understructure. You can see how I went in and just kind of like, what you do is you just keep going over the piece until you get it nice and smooth and get your shapes to where you want them. I don't want this built out too much right now because this is basically an understructure sculpt. He's not quite to these forms yet. It's kind of like the inner core sculpture that I'm going to be building off the top of. So I'm going to get ready to bake this. But before I bake it, I get everything whittled down. I actually leave these tool marks in the sculpt. You can see I have two different rakes, one for large areas and one for smaller areas. But I'll actually whittle this down and leave those cut marks in the sculpt, because when I start putting Sculpey over the top of this, I'm going to want something for it to kind of grab onto, and all these little grooves all kind of add up to be a nice rough texture that my clay can adhere to. But you can see I left one arm kind of bare here, where I can show you how I go about it. I would probably have the arm off of the form at this stage, but you can see just shaving away. Get this nice smooth shape, but mostly just to get this overall texture on my understructure sculpt. So when I start piling on that next layer, which the next layer of Sculpey will be my actual detail layer, where I go in and start getting all those roots and veins and rib cage and all that stuff in it. So, but before I can do that, I got to have a really good foundation. See, I start to lose a lot of material, but this covers a large area. You don't get these really deep dug in areas. You get a nice even surface that's been shaved down. I think I said in my last video, I kind of avoided using the rakes. They didn't make sense to me, and so I never was open to using them. And then after watching a couple tutorials recently, I said, you know what, I got to give it a try. I got to make a couple. And it's basically, I took jeweler saw blades, long jeweler saw blades, bent them and stuck them into a handle like this. So I made these myself, and they are very effective. As kind of a preview of what I'll do once, for my next layer, and I'll probably go into this more, but for the next layer, see how I have this nice rounded shoulder here? If I was to start to go into my final layer, where I start to define some of this musculature, that's another thing these tools are really good at. Here's one that is a little bit smaller loop tool, but you can see that I can actually start to shave in by kind of turning my wrist. Get these large, smooth gouges out of my clay that start to form, a bit of my anatomy that I'm going to eventually want. Kind of following the contours where I think I need to. See, you can start to see some of those muscles that wrap the shoulder and everything. They probably won't be this defined in the final sculpt, but gives you an idea of what I can get this sculpt to. Smooth that down so you can kind of see what I did. Yeah, see, starting to get some indications of anatomy there, but I won't be really getting into that too much until my next layer. But yeah, that's a stage I go through right before I start getting into my detailed final layer. You can see the legs are done that way, the shoulder areas. I'm kind of waiting on the forearms right now because it's going to be real crucial that I leave this. I kind of have an idea on how I can sculpt these arm sections that have the two separations of the bones that we have in our forearms, the ulna and the, I'm not quite sure, I remember the other bone. And I feel like I have a way that this can actually be produced, how this can be pulled from a vinyl mold. So I'm still checking with the factory to see if my idea is gonna work. But I feel like if I separate the hand from the arm and have these both end as kind of a fork, that I'll be able to pull this whole arm out of the mold. So don't quote me, on that. I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that the factory will be able to do that. But I don't think I've ever seen it done in the production of a vinyl toy, but I feel like it's going to work. So anyway, I'm going to hold off on these, but that kind of brings up another point. Is you can see how I kind of started to map out my center line and where my rib cage is going to end and everything. I will more than likely detail this entire area and not even touch this at first, for the reason that that I'm going to want to have something to hold on to while I'm sculpting that upper section. I may try to keep it on the stand as much as possible, but sometimes I have to remove the arms, remove the torso, and hold the torso in my hand to really spin it the way I want and get at all those details. So I will probably end it about there and do all this detail. Once this detail is done, I will bake that whole entire area. Then I will attack this area and I will do all the detail down here. That way the torso is almost done in sections. I will probably do the arms that way too, where I will do all the detail up here, leave myself a nice transition area here with details that I can then move down, do the arm and the hand, eventually separating the hand from the arm for the reason I had noted earlier. The legs I will probably do as one complete piece, maybe sculpting upper leg first so I can hold on to the lower leg, and then then when I'm finished with the upper leg, I'll be able to hold on to that once it's baked and finish this lower leg. And once again, I'll go into this a little bit more in detail once I start getting more into the sculpt. But you can see I removed the head here so I can get in there and kind of tool away at this guy and see how some of this is actually kind of blocked out a little bit more of the neck here. So I'm going to finish that up, get that ready to bake, because I'm going to want to bake all of this today. Maybe I can start blocking this guy out. I want to make sure it's at a nice point in the camera lens so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. But this will be a kind of a slow bit of the process where I'm going to want to just slowly fill in all these areas. See the gaps in here under the nose. Start building up this head a little bit. Now these eyes are, basically you can see in the drawing, the eyes are kind of set a lot deeper than I have here, but that's because I wanted to allow myself some room so I can have total control. I make them look nice and bulgy, but I will eventually build this brow out to the exact point I want it to have those eyes kind of hooded underneath those big overhanging face tentacles or trunk or whatever you want to call it. Now, one of the problems I'm going to have is my eyesight isn't the best these days. So I always wear these called optivisors. I kind of put on my eyes. You can see, let's see if you can see that, where it magnifies everything I'm working on. It's kind of hard to wear them when I have the camera going, but I'm going to figure that out because I think I'm going to want to be able to wear those at some point. And the tentacles, I will start to put that. I kind of checked it before I got the camera rolling to make sure that as this thing is plugged in that these look like they're hanging at the right angle. Like I had mentioned before, I wanted to make them look like they kind of have some life. They kind of twitch and undulate, but they're still affected by gravity, so they're kind of hanging straight down. And once again, I will probably work slightly larger. Kind of build these things out a little bit more than they need to be, because it's always easier to shave away once they're too big rather than, you know, add on because they're too small. And I also have some little extra tools that I make too. And this thing looks kind of crude, but you can see I'll make tools like this so I don't have to hold on to the neck totally while I'm working. But I can still spin it around. This tool was made for the torso, but works pretty good for the head too. I don't know if I need it right now. Another thing I think I mentioned in the last video that might have gotten lost was that I've heard a number of different sculptors say that, and I kind of do the same thing kind of unconsciously, but they work their sculpture all the way with their hands as much as possible. They'll work it to the very last minute, doing as much details as possible, getting things shaped as much as possible, and trying to get the forms to work as much as possible with just their hands before they pick up a tool. So the point this guy's at right now, I will probably be working on him strictly with my hands, just to get the forms right and everything for the next few days. I might jump ahead on maybe one appendage, just, you know, so it makes for an interesting video. But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be all about laying in that clay, getting it where I want it, getting the shapes as close as possible, with the idea that once I get them to a certain point, I'll be able to refine even more with my tools. Got some kind of hard to reach areas under here, under the trunk. Yeah, it's going to be really, these tentacles are actually going to be fun. You can see kind of like bumps and bulges as they go through those ridges. Kind of like a big giant earthworm or something. It's going to be fun to detail that out. I actually, artists in the past have treated Man-Thing so many different ways. The way they've drawn his, you know, the nose tentacles and the trunk and stuff is that, you know, some people have made him like super clean and regimented, almost like a ribbed hose or something. And then other artists have treated them almost like an earthworm or a snake or a tentacle, where they look all rough and uneven with bulges here and there and some kind of strange curves. That to me make the things look like they're more alive, like they actually have life. They'd actually might be moving. I don't know if anybody saw that. It was a film that came out a few years ago that was actually an adaptation of, it was a movie based on Man-Thing, and it was really in name only. It was, I think they used the same name, Ted Sallis, as the guy who was changed into Man-Thing. You never actually saw his origin, and Man-Thing was just like kind of this vengeful spirit that lived in the woods or in the swamp, and just really was not anything true to the character. It was back in the days where you kind of wonder, you know, Marvel's probably kind of seeing it as, yeah, you know what, we're not going to do anything with this character anyway. So, but the movie itself, it has some atmosphere to it, and even the creature, even Man-Thing, you lose any sense of structure to what he looks like or what the forms are, or this wonderful suit that they actually created for the movie, because it's just so underlit, and it's they're going for mood over really giving you that money shot of the monster. And it's too bad, because you can find a lot of behind the scenes video and images of the costume itself, and it's actually really cool. Very detailed. Almost looks like a next generation Man-Thing, because he does have the kind of trunks in the front of his face and stuff. But yeah, just more of a vengeful, horrific character than the real Man-Thing is. Not really true to his character, because he does, I mean, he's still a hero, even though he's a monster. You can see some of these starting to take shape here. I might end up grinding back away at these, like I had told you before, just to get, I really like that little curl at the end of the trunk here. So I'm going to want to maintain that at some point. Yeah, I'm going to need my goggles here pretty soon.